now listening to the Gabba Gabba Talks podcast, where we bring you conversations with people connected to the Carolinas underground music scene. Hey there, and welcome to episode 11 of Gabba Gabba Talks. On this week's episode, my guest is Mike Benson from one3four, From the Gun, and Trash Room, just to name a few. Now, me and Mike go way back, and you'll hear all about that all throughout this episode. He's one of my best friends in the scene, and I love that we're still playing shows together. Now, I'm going to keep the introduction for this one brief. There's really not a whole lot to promote as far as shows go. There's not anything going on right now. You know that. But, since you don't have as much to do, why don't you check out some local podcasts? There's Spit in My Face podcast. You can find that at spitinmyfacepodcast.com. Or Something Good For You. Look for it on iTunes or Spotify. There's the Bad Seed podcast, Riot House podcast, and another one I've been listening to lately, Best of Worst Of, featuring Jesse from the Menders. Now again, I'm keeping this one short, so don't go too crazy out there. It's a weird world we live in. Just wash your damn hands. And stay away from everybody. I mean, I'd like to hang out with you right now, but we can't. So unless you gotta go out, just don't. I know it sucks. Anyway, you've heard all this shit from everybody else. Let me get to the damn podcast. Technology. Yeah. So I want to start doing stuff like this more often.
Right.
So.
Yeah, this is great. It looks cool from where I'm sitting. You've got like your background with your lights and your records, and I see your tape player.
Yeah.
It looks like a studio. It's
yeah.
Cool.
That's what I wanted to do, was set it up to look sort of like a studio. And at first I was backed up a little bit further towards the wall, but then I moved everything out and gave myself some more space. So.
Yeah.
It works out a lot better. I still got some cleaning up and rearranging to do because I'm in the middle of about 5 different projects. This place is a wreck right now.
Yeah.
This is about the cleanest looking area there is, and it's still a jumbled mess. But all right, well, I'm talking to Mike Benson, currently of both Trash Room and Dead Regions.
Yo.
And I've known you, Mike, since 1993. I think we figured out it was 1993 when that Armory show was.
That's right.
I'm trying to figure out if Matt got the Spinning Mule, that Deep South compilation, if he got it, because he got it from, I think, like he said, one of his aunts worked at Clemson.
Yeah.
Gave him that compilation. But I'm trying to remember if he got that first or if we picked up a 7-inch at Milestone Records. I think he got the compilation first. Then we picked that up, and then around the same time, before we really knew Eric and Saunders picked that up too. I think it was the 2/5 7-inch.
Yeah, you're talking about 134, right?
Yeah, 134.
Yep.
Yeah, I might have left that detail out. But so around the same time before we knew them, they picked it up. And then when we met and started talking about playing in a band together, and we were talking about, the Milestone and the shows we'd seen and the 7-inches we bought, and it's like, oh man, these guys are just like us. I gotta play with these guys. So you kind of helped facilitate that a little bit before we even knew each other, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, I mean, like back then, as you remember, it was very different. There was, of course, no social media. There was no internet even. I mean, you could maybe send an email to somebody somewhere, but that was just not really an option. So we relied very much on networking through telephone, going to record stores, looking at flyers, very old school in that respect. It was often frustrating, it was hard to get a hold of people and hard to nail people down as far as getting times and things booked, but we made it happen, and it was very much a community effort. Nobody could really do it by themselves. You had to have help. and that was part of it. You couldn't just email a club like you can today and say, hey, this is my band, we're on tour, can we have this date? I mean, that just didn't happen.
Yeah.
As you know, people were like, oh, I don't know who you are, or if there's even a venue in the state that could really do that kind of thing. It was all very much word of mouth, house parties, that kind of thing. So yeah, anything we could do to help other bands, because we got the same in return, and it was all a part of a big community, and it was a lot of fun. It was great. Met a lot of great people that way, and I'm really glad that's how we came up. I think we really had to work a lot harder, and we earned a lot more for a lot less recognition. We all did back then, but it's just because we loved it.
Yeah. And like at that time, we were just learning how to do this, how to put on shows and things like that. And so we reached out to you guys and a couple other people that we had bought either 7 Inches by, or I think Matt said we sent, and I do remember this, GQ Posse, we sent them a letter asking them if they wanted to do that Armory show. That was a benefit for Arc Overnight. And we talk about this on episode. I won't go into all the details. Because we talk about it in episode 2 if anybody wants to hear the whole story. But so we reached out to you, and Matt seems to remember that we offered to pay you guys, or that you guys asked for a certain amount of money. But I think we told you we weren't going to be able to pay you because it was a benefit show. But we did end up giving you some money because you guys did come from so far. I don't know if you remember the details of that, and it's not really that important.
Yeah, I don't really remember the details. I remember never getting paid for anything. That's what I remember.
Yeah.
This particular instance may be different. I can't really speak to that. I mean, I know, for example, we played lots of shows in small towns around South Carolina and Georgia for just house parties, basically, just for the fun of it. And we always lost money because we always had gas expenses, and gear wasn't any cheaper back then. And, but so we tried to do as much free stuff as we can. I think the most that we ever actually made was we were traveling somewhere. I think we were maybe in Augusta. We were just driving past something, and somebody said, "Hey, there's a battle of the bands going on. You guys got to go check it out." I don't really remember the details, and we're like, "Okay, this would be hilarious." Like 1-3-4 playing a battle of the bands. I mean, it's absurd. So we went and did our thing, and it was at some college, and it's summer in the middle of the heat outside, and we were being idiots, just running around because we had nothing to lose. We didn't care. And we found out later we actually won, and they gave us $100. And we're like, wow, we got $100 for like doing nothing. I mean, it was ironic, really, because we'd spent so much time crafting our set and playing other shows and going way out of our way. And this one, we just did the minimum amount of effort and got the most out of it financially. Yeah. It's kind of like pretty much a metaphor for our entire career in that band, really.
Yeah.
So.
I'm just really glad that even without the promise of money, you guys were like, yeah, let's go play the Armory in Kings Mountain. With these guys that just out of high school that don't really know that much about, we didn't really go that far, but the fact that you guys came out, because it spawned a friendship that lasted a long time, and obviously we would have ended up meeting at some point anyway.
Yeah.
But to have that all that history behind it, it's really cool. Yeah,
it's fun to look back on, especially when we, our bands this day are still playing shows together. It's something I never in a million years would have thought would happen in the future. Just because, life takes so many weird twists and turns, you don't know what you're going to be doing. And I got out of music really for a while. I was doing other stuff. I was played, but I kind of gave up on it as a career pretty early on. I knew that I would never really do it for a living.
Yeah.
And so, that kind of, when you get to a certain age, you got to start thinking about, like, well, how am I going to make a living now? My standards are going up a little bit. I don't want to have no money and live in a crappy place forever. I want to try to do something about it. And so that, unfortunately, kind of takes a lot of attention and time. So that was kind of where we were at that point too.
Yeah.
But we had a good run. We did that band for about 6 years, and it seemed like forever at the time. I mean, but now it's funny. I just had this conversation with my boys, Joey and Johnny. We talked about how time speeds up as you get older. We talked specifically about 1-3-4 and how 6 years at that age 20, was a long time. And now it seems like it never would have. We're already in 3 years into Trash Room, and it seems like we just started.
Yeah.
And that just gives you kind of some perspective on how things happen. But yeah, it was a lot of fun, man. I really honestly don't remember a lot of the details. I was kind of going through a phase where I just drank a whole lot.
Yeah.
And honestly, like way more than I should have, and that kind of was one of the factors of why we broke up, to be honest. And but it was a lot of fun. I remember having a great time and just meeting a bunch of great people and maintaining friendships, losing some friendships. But that's how it goes, right?
Yeah. So, and we'll get back to 134 just a little bit. So you grew up in Charlotte.
Yep.
You're from Charlotte.
Yeah, I did.
And did you ever play any bands while you lived in Charlotte? And I'm going to go ahead and just save everybody some time here. I'm going to just say skateboarding, because I usually ask people how they got into punk rock. And it's pretty obvious that most of the guys around our age got into it through skateboarding. And you were a big skateboarder, so I'm pretty sure that's how you got into punk rock as well. Absolutely.
Well, I mean, I started with music first. I was a huge fan of music from a young age, and really knew I wanted to play guitar at some point, but just couldn't make it happen. But, I kind of noodled around with it for a little while, and then skateboarding and skate rock, specifically the faction, kind of really focused on what I wanted to do. Gave me a template and a path. Like that song Skate and Destroy, for whatever reason, like when I first time I heard that, I was like, this is what I want to do. This is it. I finally found like a target to hit.
Yeah.
And I was obviously a huge fan of Steve Caballero at the time anyway. But yeah, skateboarding is how I got into it, and I had a ramp in my backyard, which was pretty uncommon back then, really. Built all from scratch by me and a family friend. Didn't know what we were doing, and it somehow didn't fall down. And people started coming over, and I also did a fanzine back then called Pad Rot. That was a big part of that. And so we had that kind of out and about, and we traveled a lot too. We went all over the city and up to different parts of the state as well. But that was a huge part of it, yeah. And then just playing music on the jam box and all hanging out. And, I still know people like Mike Thrower and Billy Wheat from those days, that I lost track of. And honestly didn't really know very well back then. But that was one of the perks of having a ramp. People came to your place and knew who you were. Yeah. And it was always a lot of fun, because I always had people coming over and skating, and everybody was always awesome, and we just had a blast. But that's definitely how I got into punk rock, for sure.
Yeah. Did you ever play any bands before you went away to college here in Charlotte?
Yeah, I was in a band, short-lived. It didn't actually really do anything. I wanted to play with a friend of mine, Steve Knox, who went on to be in Zyklon B with Fred Hutchinson. And that was a great project for them. I was not really at that level at the time. I mean, those guys were, Fred had been doing 30-Foot Beast, and he'd doing other projects, and his level was so much higher. I tried to aspire to that, but I could never really get it together with people. And Charlotte's always been kind of a weird town for me, because I grew up in the suburbs, and a lot of the action was happening downtown and places I didn't really know about, and people I didn't really know. And I tried to be a part of it, and through skating it helped a lot. But as far as music, I would go to shows and stuff, but that was hard. It was hard for me to connect with people. I'm also kind of a loner and a weirdo, and honestly, there was a huge skinhead problem back then, so that was a big factor as well. And you've heard Jeff Clayton talk about it, and Russ has talked about it as well, and we were all part of that. So all those factors combined for me kind of just sitting at home and playing a lot and just recording stuff with my friend Steve and trying to get something going on, but not really doing much until I actually went away to college.
It was 134 the first band you started when you went to college? Because I know you also played in Sleestacks around that time, which
I was in Sleestacks first. Started out as a rhythm guitar player. They needed somebody, and I was already friends with Will Connor, who was also in that band. I met him in Manifest in Clemson pretty much right away after I moved there in summer of '88 or fall of '88, '89, and so I started out in Sleestacks playing rhythm guitar. Was not really I didn't really fit in with those guys at all. I mean, I was kind of a punk rock weirdo, and they were pretty kind of straight up guys, but they were all really cool. Yeah. And I got to know them well, and I'm still friends with Rob. He's a great guy, great bass player, and we went on to do some really cool stuff. Not at all what I expected to do. So I learned a lot from those guys. I learned a lot about how to be in a band and how to play music and how to learn from people and how to listen by ear to other people that are playing that stuff that you didn't write. Because that's always been a challenge for me, is playing other people's music. It's always been hard. So Sleestacks was the big breakthrough for me personally, and we started playing shows right away, and I had to learn really fast. We were in the studio. The first time we went in the studio, I had the flu, and it was miserable. And Will's wife at the time, Kathy, took care of me. It was a great overall experience, and it really I learned a lot really fast with those guys. And
Yeah.
And then at the same time, near the end of that my stint with that band, I was starting 134. Although it wasn't called that at first. It was called Iron Lung, and it was me and my wife Angela, who at the time was, we were not really dating. We were just kind of friends, but of course now it turned into a lot more than that. And she's now, and for you guys that don't know, she's the bass player for Trash Room. We've learned a lot through the years, and just being in 134 was very challenging and difficult because I was in 2 bands. I was going to college, had to maintain a certain GPA without getting kicked out. But I knew I didn't really care much about school, honestly. Like I didn't really. I was never going to be an academic. I was an okay student. I just wanted to meet people and play music. And anyway, so that was the start of 134. It was just us dorking around trying to come up with song riffs, and turned into a pretty good band. I thought it was a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, it's one of the best bands from this area of all time. I mean, it's just so good. On that episode I was talking about, episode 2, me and Matt, it may have actually been the one I did. It's episode 3, technically, the radio episode, but we talk about 134 on one of those 2 episodes and just talk about how there was never a bad moment. Like every 134 show was just so good. I
really appreciate that, and that was we did our best to make sure we were fun to watch too, because intellectually, we were playing difficult material. I was pushing myself as far as I could as a guitar player. But for me, performance is always first. Like that's what people care about. They don't care about the music as much when you're standing in front of them. And when you're standing in front of them playing a show, like you gotta bring something to the table that they haven't seen before that gets them excited.
Yeah.
I wanted to get people to feel something. I didn't want them. To me, the worst thing that could possibly happen is somebody was bored at one of our shows. Like if someone they hated us or they were throwing shit at us because we were terrible. I'm okay with that. Now of course people have phones. Back then they didn't have phones, but if you saw them looking around or they were kind of wandering around, walking out of the place, that was to me a warning sign. We had to just step it up a notch.
Yeah.
And we tried to be as intense and loud as we possibly could, and we wanted people to feel that feeling that we felt and that excitement. So I appreciate you saying that, because that was very intentional for us, and it really meant a lot to us to put on as good of a show as possible.
Yeah, because it was always just a great show, and the musicianship as well. I mean, we were super impressed with that because we were just learning. Like I said earlier, we were learning not just how to throw shows, but how to be in a band and how to write songs and play music, and to see you guys as technical as your songs were, and you just nail them, and then still put on that kind of show at the same time. And again, whether you nailed them or not, that's in our minds, you nailed them every time. It was just it was such a good band and so much fun. And I'm so glad that I was a part of some of those shows.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I still have those videos of you guys, you and Eric showing up to that one show at Heretics. And I've posted a still shot of that a couple times, and it's fun to look back and see that, because I don't remember all the details of that night, but I remember being there. I remember that show, and I can't say that for all the shows, but it was special because we had Chris Pickle filling in for us, because Sam, I'm not sure why, I can't remember why, Sam couldn't do the show. But that's what we did. If somebody couldn't do the show, we did it with a replacement.
Yeah.
Honestly, me and Will were we didn't care that much about hurting people's feelings. I mean, we love those guys. I love Sam and Finley, but the band always came first. And I was luckily never in a situation where I couldn't do a show. So I was always there. Will was always there. We couldn't really replace Will.
Yeah.
But that was a night that we had Chris Pickle sitting in, and he only had a couple rehearsals. We did one show with him there, and then one show in Columbia, and he nailed it, man. And we went on to do another project together too, and he was just always a joy to work with, and super intense guy and very serious, and he just lit up when we went on stage. He's kind of an unassuming, quiet guy in some ways, and then we get him on stage and he would just go crazy, and it was perfect for us. So those shows were fun, and we didn't play Charlotte a whole lot. I kind of was in South Carolina for a long time. It didn't really come up this way too much, but we did occasionally, and that was one of them, and that was a lot of fun. Yeah.
And Chris sang for Inhumanity at the time.
Yep.
And that was a great show. I remember you guys actually covered a Pope's. I guess we were still Popes on Dope at the time. Popes on Dope song. Makes me want to vomit. You covered that song at that show.
We did do that.
I wish there was a video of that whole show, but it's good that there's that one song up there.
Yeah, that was a lot. We tried to do that as much as possible. We always enjoyed riffing off other people's songs and playing songs that our friends wrote. It was really fun for us, and likewise, and people would do that to us too. It was always a sort of a salute to their their songs and their styles, especially if they were very different. It was a lot more fun for us and challenging. But yeah, we love doing that kind of stuff. We love, especially not telling people and just doing it and seeing their expressions and their reactions. It was always fun.
And one thing about 134, so you guys started at Clemson.
Yeah.
But then at one point you relocated to Columbia.
Right.
And you ended up in Raleigh.
Yep.
But when you were in Columbia, you did a play called Bullbait Gaucho.
Yeah, we did.
And I remember I came down there to see it, and it was awesome.
Oh,
it was really cool. I think it's floating around on the internet somewhere.
Yeah.
I'll have to track it down and post it on the Facebook page.
That'd be great. Yeah, Chris Bickle did a video of that as well, and he, it's funny. I'd harassed him for years, like, "Hey, can I get a copy of that?" And he was like, "Oh, I'll find it somewhere." And I know he meant well, but he's got a million projects of his own going on, and he finally got it, and I was like, "Holy crap! It really does exist." And I saw it, and I was just like, it brought it all back right away. And just for those of you guys, you probably don't know what it is. It was we worked with some students at USC when we were in Columbia, and Finley wrote the script. He was a creative writing major at first, and then he wrote the script. Will had these crazy ideas for like a non-1-3-4 set that we did. It was all kind of more like instrumental jazz-based type stuff. Mm-hmm. He's primarily a jazz drummer, or he was at the time. Finley was a jazz bass player. I was like the lone punk rock person that was having to adapt. Yeah. And it was a lot of fun. It was very hard for me to do that, especially when they turned the lights off and I was playing up in the dark, and people that you don't know watching you that don't care that you're a punk rocker, they expect to see like, a professional performance because we were charging money for it and stuff, and we didn't want the students to look bad because it was their project and we wanted to do our best job. Yeah. But it was a blast. We had a great time. I mean, just being there with all those people, all those creative people, and it was hilarious. I mean, the stuff. I think there's this copy of the scripts around somewhere too as well. If you just read the script, it's just insane. Yeah. The gist is basically there's a religious fanatic that's running a town, and it's also part of the Wild West, and this other person comes in and challenges that, and it's very interesting that they duel through math, and so there's like equations up on the board, and then we worked some of that stuff into our regular set afterward. But it was a very kind of creative time for us. We were writing songs all the time, and we had a ton of material that we used. Yeah. Just to be clear, we didn't do any of the acting. We were just the backdrop. We provided the music, and the actors that knew what they were doing were the actual highlights. So you moved to Columbia. Was there a particular reason why you guys all decided to move there? Yeah, well, we graduated all kind of at the same time, and we wanted to go somewhere. We wanted to stay together as a band because we were just kind of hitting our stride, honestly. Mm-hmm. And we were very tight at the time, very close friends. And I'm going to stop you for a second. Was Sam still in the band at this time? I can't remember. Yeah, he was, and he was one of the main reasons we moved to Columbia because he had a lot of friends. He's from Columbia, and he had a lot of friends that were still there. And while we were at Clemson, we went to Columbia quite a bit and played house shows and parties and hung out with a lot of people from there. So we kind of already knew a lot of people anyway. Yeah. And we were already friends with bands like Imp and those guys, and so we were already doing shows together, and it was very easy to make that transition. And Columbia, even then, well, at least back then, it was a very cheap place to live. We all had a great setup. We got like a house with a practice room in it, and it was really fun. It was a great transition for us. Yeah. And so we were there for about 2 years or so, and then it was time to kind of move on. We kind of done all we could at that point, I thought, in Columbia. Yeah. Now we were, I had to remind you guys, we were very ambitious. We knew we weren't going to be professional studio musicians. We knew we weren't going to be popular or famous, but we were very driven and ambitious to do the best job we could and see how far we could go. And we were 100% dedicated to it. Like we gave up relationships, we gave up, in some cases, families, to just focus on this insane music that we were playing. And it took us a couple of different places and a couple of little tours, and that just kind of gives you an idea of how dedicated we were to it. And for just for a couple 7-inches. Here and there, we didn't really have a whole lot of a long catalog to put out. We just were more like a live band, honestly. We just love playing shows. I remember you had the cassette. There was the 2/5 7-inch. There was the
There's another 7-inch. I'm trying to remember what it was.
Well, we had Too Much Jolt and the Reverser.
Too Much Jolt Reverser. I've got that one as well.
And we had Unit F and Buried Alive.
Yeah. And I lost my copy of the CD and my copy of the cassette years and years ago. I think I let an ex-girlfriend borrow them and never got them back when the break.
Huge mistake.
Yeah, I've learned that.
I've got a couple copies left of the CD, which is ironic because we made 1,000 of them because that was the minimum order you could make.
Yeah, back then.
And we ended up with boxes of them just sitting around, and we eventually just gave them all away, or somebody probably threw a lot of them out. And now I've got like 4 left.
Yeah.
You know, actually, it's funny you got your Boo Hag shirt on. I just gave one to Saul at our last show that we did with Dead Regions. And you guys. And so that was, I keep a few around for people that I know will know what it means and means something to them.
Yeah.
So I'll definitely get you another copy of that, as long as you promise not to loan it out to an ex-girlfriend.
or a current girlfriend. No, yeah. I've learned my lesson there.
Yeah, right, exactly. But yeah, that CD has all of our 7-inches. It doesn't have anything from the cassette, but it has all our 7-inches and then a few other things that were recorded that we never really put out anywhere else. And we have a couple of songs that were released separately from that as well that we never did anything with, that are kind of floating around, not in any kind of hard copy. There were some of my favorite songs, like Soda Piss and Caffeine Crash, that were just sort of like insane songs that we wrote just about Jolt Cola, really. I mean, we wrote a lot of trilogies, so we had Too Much Jolt. Then we also had Soda Piss and Caffeine Crash. They all kind of went together. Kind of like we had 2/5, 1, 3, and 4.
Yeah.
They all kind of went together. We had Unit M, Unit F. Unit F was, the one we recorded, but we also had Unit M, and that's, of course, about my mom and dad. So Unit M is the mom, Unit F is the father, and then we had another one called Bastard, which was me. And so we had those songs that we never really recorded. We didn't do Unit M or the Bastard. But yeah, we were all about themes and groups of songs. That was a very big thing for us. I know we're talking a lot about 1-3-4. I know we want to move on, but to me that was such a fundamental relationship that I had with music and other people, and it really changed who I was as a person in a lot of ways. And I could not have done what I'm doing now without going through that experience, and other bands in between. But that was, I don't know, it was such a huge part of my life back then. I still think about it all the time, and I fantasize about doing reunion shows that I know will never happen because we're all spread out. But it's not something just I did and it's gone away like some of the other bands I've done. But that was a huge part of my life, and I'll never forget it. And I've learned so much about it. It still is a big part of who I am.
Yeah, and I don't mean to keep saying it just to kiss your ass or anything, but it was such good music because it wasn't just, I mean, it was good music. It was fun to listen to, but it was also challenging, and it was exciting, different stuff. And you just didn't hear that kind of stuff anywhere, and much less it be that good and that much fun to listen to.
Well, I appreciate that. I mean, it was really emotional and intellectual at the same time. Like for me, I was more of a play-by-feel player, a guitar player, self-taught. I don't really understand music. I don't know much about music theory. I couldn't really tell you much about it. It's all about where my fingers land on the fretboard. Mm-hmm. I don't have any real knowledge of the instrument besides what I can just pick up and play, and that's sort of intentional too. But I did learn early on from Will, who was an accomplished guitar player and drummer and physicist and jazz musician and PhD in musicology. You know, one of these overachiever type guys.
Yeah.
That I needed to change. You know, I needed to have something. I needed to do something different because what I was doing wasn't going anywhere, and so I had to really break the way I thought about guitar playing. And luckily, I didn't have any real preconceptions at the time either, so I had to really just redo what I was doing and not think about it and put my hands on the guitar and just play stuff and try different tempos and different techniques and just really on my own. And Will would be like, yeah, that's good, or no, that's not good. You know, he was pretty blunt about it. And keep in mind, he was a little older than us. He was like 6 years older. He was married. He had a real job, and he was paying his way through college. He didn't have time to mess around, you know, and I always respected that about him. When he gave you his time, that meant that you were worthy of it. And for an 18-year-old kid, that meant a lot. I had a mentor for the first time, and I took it very seriously. So I completely rethought how I play guitar, and that was a real conscious effort to change the way the songs are written. So you'll hear a very different style of music from the cassette versus the 7 inches. Mm-hmm. And the cassette's a lot more kind of straightforward, not just power chords, but major chords, not really atonal, pretty much 4/4 times. Then you hear 2/5, which is the first 7-inch we put out, and you know it's different times. It's an odd time, and I'm playing a non-traditional chord. It's atonal, and the rhythm is messed up, and it's not something you can play fast. It's all downstrokes. Yeah, and it kind of like that was where that was like my first attempt to say, here, this is what I want to do now. This is where we're going to go. And if you listen to the 7-inch, it's very rough sounding. I made a ton of mistakes on the recording. That's the best I could do, but it was real terrible. Like the performance was just bad. The guitar tone is terrible. You know, I look back on, I wish I knew more about stuff like that than I did. But whatever. I mean, it was just raw, really guitar into the amp into the microphone. There was nothing fancy about it. And and then we had to take that to the next level. It was always like outdoing ourselves, and so we would intellectually write a song that was an odd time, but we had to make sure that it felt right too. Like it had to evoke something in you. If it was just purely mathematical, it would be boring, you know. So we wanted to add that rage on top of it, like translating that emotion of like a 7/8 into a feeling of being incomplete. And like, how does that feel like when you're trying to get something going and then it just stops, shut off, and you're moving on to something else? Yeah. For like something being broken up, with, or another friendship going downhill or whatever, or your parents disappointing you in some way, or you disappointing your parents. That was all going through my mind at the time, and that's how I translated that emotion into guitar playing. And so I was always kind of an energetic, spastic person, so it was very easy to make that into a live performance that I could just turn off my brain and just do it, and it was in the moment, and that was like the freest I'd ever been in my entire life.
So after Columbia, you guys moved to Raleigh.
Yep.
Became a 3-piece around that time?
Yeah, we originally were going to move with Sam. That was the plan, and then he told us like a week before he didn't want to do it, which of course we were disappointed, but I understood. I mean, he was very tight with his Columbia people, and his family was all there, and I got it. But at the time, it was pretty frustrating because I thought we were starting to get some momentum, and anytime you change a member like that, it's always difficult. So we didn't know what his lyrics were at all, so we just made all new ones. Yeah. And we in Finley were sitting down thinking, well, there's just no way I can play guitar and sing this part. It's impossible. So I need you to do a vocal part there. And they'd be like, all right, I'll do that vocal part. And he would write something crazy and stick it in there. Yeah. And he would say, well, this part, playing slap and I'm going up a few different, I can't really focus on both. And like, okay, well, I'm playing something a little bit simpler. And so I'll do a vocal part here. And it was never intentional. We always thought at some point we'll get another vocalist. It just took a while. But we were a 3-piece for a good amount of time. And I mean, honestly, we had a couple people say they preferred it that way. Nothing against Sam, but I guess it was, I don't know what it was about it. It was a different band at that point, and it was more challenging for us, but it was a lot of fun, and the lyrics were hilarious to us, and so And then we got to run our mouths. I mean, that was, to me, was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Someone would put a microphone in front of me, and I'll just say whatever the hell I wanted.
So what was the reason originally for moving to Raleigh? Was there a particular reason why you wanted to go there?
Well, we were friends with like Kenny Roby and those guys, and we'd always knew that Raleigh was a cool town. We had played with, I believe we played at least one show with Picasso Trigger.
Yeah.
And we just loved that whole scene up there, and we went and checked it out. And of course, Finley being from Chapel Hill was all for it. He was like, yeah, let's come back up here. This is way better.
Yeah.
That was very easy for us to do. Will was all in, and so we just all picked up and did it. And back then we didn't care about jobs really. We knew we'd find something, but that wasn't really a focus. So we just decided to move to Raleigh and just see what kind of trouble we could cause there. And it was awesome. We had a great time.
Yeah.
It was a great town, and we had lots of great friends there and met a lot of great people. And the bands there were like such a high level of musicianship, and just their attitudes were very different and a lot more serious in a lot of ways. And it really helped us kind of elevate ourselves a little bit and branch out more. And it was really good for us at the time.
It really was. That whole area at that time was just so good as far as the level of talent up there and the bands that came out of that area.
Right.
Not just like Raleigh, but Chapel Hill as well.
Yeah, and like Polvo was really active back then, and Bitch Magnet was, those guys kind of up there. And we also had like bands coming up from Georgia and stuff, like Sugar was coming up, and other bands that were around that we just kind of knew about. And it was a very happening place to be. And there's of course Cat's Cradle. We never played there, but that was like one of the best places to go. Local 506 was there back then. We played there.
Yeah.
It's still around now. I haven't been to it in years, but it's just the fact that stuff's still there. It was like really, really cool.
I drove through Chapel Hill recently when I went to go visit Matt in Durham. On the way back, I went through Chapel Hill, and it's crazy how so much has changed down through there.
Yeah.
But as I'm going down through there, I remembered exactly where 506 and the Cave were. I was like, as soon as I pulled up to them, I was like, "This is where 506." Yep, there it is. And it was that area was exactly the same.
Yeah, exactly.
Like that block, but there's a block where there's a Target right there on the road on Franklin, and it's crazy.
Yeah, so that was Raleigh was a great place for us. It ended up being the last place we had the band. That was like after a couple years, it kind of just like got to the point where I was kind of done with it and didn't want to admit it, and took it out of my bandmates, and it wasn't a good ending, but it worked out all right. We all moved on to other things, but musically it was a lot of fun and challenging, and we made a lot of great friends. We had some friends of ours come up and move up there with us too eventually, so it wasn't just the music people, it was a couple other buddies.
Yeah.
And so it was, we were very much involved with each other's lives too.
Yeah.
Very in each other's business all the time, so for whatever it's worth.
After 134 broke up, what did you do after that? Or did you play in any other? You didn't do any side projects while you were in 134, did you?
Not in 134. I didn't have time really, and all my energies were focused on that stuff.
Yeah.
And I didn't really want to, and that was not something we did back then. None of us were in side projects. It wasn't a thing. I think personally I would have felt like that was a betrayal of somebody else. Now Will he did his own side projects like jazz related stuff. He would do solo projects, and he played multiple instruments. So I never thought that was really a big deal because we were all still involved in that stuff too. But none of us went and played another band somewhere. Like Philly didn't go play bass for Thought Crime or whatever, or Sunbrain, which would have been a huge problem. And I didn't go play guitar. I mean, I was in Sleestacks at first, but then I dropped out of Sleestacks to focus on 134.
Yeah.
And I went back to Sleestacks. Not that it was nothing, bad blood on my end. I thought we all ended on good terms, and they all were very cool about it. But I just, wanted to focus on 134, which was what I wrote. That was my material.
Yeah.
So I didn't, wouldn't want to write for anybody else even back then, and didn't want to play other people's music. I'd already done that, and I didn't really like it very much.
Yeah.
And I've done it a couple times since then, but my passion is really writing songs and bringing them to life in front of people.
Yeah.
So yeah, I did a couple things other than that. Like, even when I was in college, I was in MR Ray briefly. I remember those guys. They were from Charlotte. Kevin Ticci, who went on to be in Kudzu Ganja.
Yeah.
We were good friends, and I played bass in that band. That was actually my first show at the Milestone. I was probably like 18 or 19. and we opened up for like Adrenaline OD one time, so it was really fun. We had some good times in between that, but that wasn't anything really serious for me. I played in a band briefly called the Beer Shits, which was hilarious with some guys in Raleigh. Did other things here and there. We did a band called 17956 for a little while, which is basically 134 squared.
Yeah.
And that was part of our Bull Bay Gaucho. That was a reference from that. So we did things, and me and Will were in other projects sort of together, but nothing new. And then I was in a band called The Lids with Finley, which we still, theoretically, we can still do that.
Yeah.
But never really concurrently with 134. That was just my main focus then. But yeah. But I've played in a lot of bands and played with a lot of people, and I enjoy it, and it's fun to move on to other projects when things are done. That's the time to move on. I never wanted to play when I felt like I still had something to give to a certain band.
And so after 134 broke up, you left Raleigh. You moved back to Charlotte. It was really before you moved back to Charlotte before you got serious about playing again, right?
Yeah, well, in Raleigh, I did play with Finley and my friend Vince, our friend Vince. They're now in Poinsettia together up in Raleigh.
Yeah.
And that was the Lids, me and Finley and Vince. We just noodled around and recorded stuff on a 4-track and eventually turned into a bunch of songs that we recorded at home. Never really did a official recording on, but we did that for a few years, and we did a couple shows.
Okay.
And that was in Raleigh. And then 17956 was in Raleigh, and that was one of the last times I remember seeing Matt in the crowd, and he was...
Yeah.
I mean, he's a great guy. I don't know him that well. Even back then, I didn't know him that well, but I recognized him, and he was... I think you and I talked about this.
Yeah, we did.
He kept spitting on me. I'm like, dude, what the hell? I couldn't see who it was at first. The lights were in my eyes and just playing my songs. And just somebody keeps spitting on me. I'm like, what the fuck? So I was like looking, but we didn't stop playing, And so I was looking out there, and I saw this kid with a big grin on his face. I'm like, holy shit, are you? I cannot believe it. And I was like pointing at him. I was like, you better fucking stop, man. What the hell? Why are you doing this? And he didn't stop. He kept doing it. So in the middle of the song, I just put my guitar down. The band kept going on, and I just went out and tackled him. Not hard, but I took him down, gave him a noogie or whatever. But that was for me, that was part of the show, and I loved it. And that was a memory that I have from playing in Raleigh.
Yeah.
That I probably couldn't do that these days. I don't think a lot of people would think that was very funny. But I mean, we have our own antics and trash room. We have fun with it as much, but yeah, that was sort of an interim project that I was involved in. But yeah, I mean, moved back to Charlotte after taking a break from music for a while, getting married, having a family. So, I've got 3 boys, and when they were young, that wasn't really an option. We started with twins out the gate, so that was mind-blowing. And, but during all that time, I never stopped playing, and I stockpiled riffs, really. I had a drum machine, and I would just write the most messed up things that I could possibly come up with and write songs to that and be like, this is hilarious. No one will ever play these songs. They're insanely complicated. I don't think I could play them with a real person. I don't think it's even possible.
Yeah.
And then that turned into Dead Regions, which is one of my current side project technically. Yeah. So I am doing that now after I haven't really done that for a while. But those songs are already all kind of written 10 years ago or more. Mm-hmm. So that's what happens when you're cooped up with you don't have really an outlet. You don't kind of like now we're in a situation now we can't really go out and do anything. I was sort of in that situation where I was working from home, luckily. Not at first, but I eventually moved to that. And then I had little boys to take care of that I needed all my attention, so that's what they got. And then we had a third one, and so then that put the timeline out a little bit longer of when I would be able to play again. I knew I would eventually, but and we moved back to Charlotte because I'm from here. My parents are still in the same house that I grew up in, which you were at their house for my birthday party.
Yeah.
And you saw the origin story of 134 there. That's their street address.
Yeah.
And they still have it on their mailbox. So anyway, so it's Charlotte's a great town. I've had a love-hate relationship with Charlotte for a long time. When I grew up here, I wanted to be more of a part of it. Did not fit in with a lot of the people here, but now coming back, I freaking love it. It's so much better than I remembered it ever could be. And it's honestly, of all the places I've lived and played music, right here in Charlotte right now, even with the coronavirus crap, it's the best scene I've ever been involved in, hands down. It's just no contest.
There's a lot of people saying that these days, that they feel like we've got a really good scene, that it's better than anything they've ever been a part of or seen. And I agree. I think it's excellent. I think there's some great talent out there.
And not to slam towns like Columbia and Raleigh and Chapel Hill, but I've played those places recently. Charlotte's just got more going on for whatever reason, in my experience. I'm sure I'm missing out on a lot on those places by by no means am I trying to belittle them at all, because they're both great towns. But Charlotte is an awesome place to be in a band right now, and it's even for people. I mean, I just turned 50, man, and I'm like, how many people want to see an old 50-year-old dude play these songs? And it turns out, a handful do. Yeah. And and the band support has been great. People were coming out and having a great time, and that's really for me what it's all about. I've always wanted to be a live performer first, and it just thrills me to be able to do that even at this age, when I've got so many other things going on, and other people have so many other things going on, and to take time out to do that, still have a part of my life, is just huge beyond words. I mean, I can't explain it. It's so gratifying and fulfilling to me.
It definitely makes it that much more special to be doing it at this age, to still be out there doing this, and it makes you feel young still. I don't feel my age. I'm sure you don't feel your age.
I don't, and it kind of, I feel like I have not betrayed the core personality that I've had.
Exactly.
However long I've had. I think that my 20-year-old self would be pretty proud of my 50-year-old self. Like my 20-year-old self watching me at 50 years old put on Unit F, the 1-4 7-inch, and playing it for my boys, and them going, damn, like being actually understanding that it's something legitimate to them, and they, and them doing YouTube searches and finding videos of 1-4 playing parties and stuff.
Yeah.
And like that's a thing now. Like they can see all that, and so I'm really happy that I'm still doing it, and I'm really glad that I'm married to a person that is dedicated to it as I am, and she's fierce, man. She's not messing around. So if it weren't for her, I wouldn't be doing this, and not even Trash Room, but anything at all. Without her 100% support, and you got to have somebody like that in your corner, or else it's just not going to happen.
And so we'll sort of talk about the evolution of Trash Room. At least you started playing music again in Charlotte. Me and you almost played in a band together.
Yep. We were going to call that the Jukes, I believe.
The Jukes, yeah. And it just was not the right time for me, for one thing.
Right.
And for one thing, I mean, the stuff you played was really challenging, and I had not picked up my bass in a few years at that point.
Yeah.
And I was having a hard time picking it up, but then it just, life was happening to me at that time. And not the greatest of ways, but not the worst of ways.
Understood.
And it just didn't work out. But that ultimately became Reverser, right?
Yeah, so we started off, that actually turned into 431, which was
431, yeah.
Really just kind of a recording project that I did with Ben DuBarge from Imp, who is now the bass player for Dead Regions.
Yes.
And Chris Bickle was vocals on that as well. And we just, I had some songs I wanted to play, and I wanted to get those guys on them, and we did it. And, that was sort of it. It was sort of a one shot. We played I think we played 2 shows. We only had 6 songs total, so it wasn't really even a thing.
Yeah.
And then I got the bug again. I hadn't played in a while. I'm like, man, I need to do this again. This is really great. And then just started putting feelers out and got hooked up with Scott Wishart, and we did Reverser. Mm-hmm. It wasn't really called that at first. We didn't really have a name for it, but that was Dwayne Short's idea. I knew him when I knew you guys back in the day.
Yeah.
And Reverser was his favorite 1-4 song. He's like, hey, can we call the band that? I'm like, yeah, it's fine with me. And Scott, I actually knew Scott from back then too. He knew 1-4 from back in the day.
Yeah.
And he was in a band called Scout back then. And so that became Reverser, and it was basically what 1-4 kind of would have done if we had continued. I wanted to kind of pick up from where we left off in 1-4.
Yeah.
And there was no compromising on the riffs. The times were difficult. They were written to be difficult and hard to pick up, and also kind of like 1-4. Like we said, we never want to write a song that anybody can dance to. That would be anathema to us. Like if someone's dancing in the crowd, we're doing something wrong. We want them to be confused and angry, and that was what we wanted to do in Reverser too. We wanted to, if I get a blank stare from somebody, that's perfectly fine. I want them to be, either confused or off balance somehow, and at least then, not so much now. But so that turned into Reverser, and we did a lot of 1-4-ish type songs. We didn't really officially release anything, but we had about 8 songs that we recorded, and I still put them on every once in a while as inspiration, and they were fun to play. We were together for a little while, and then we all kind of went our own ways. Like you said before, things happen. We all kind of split off in different directions and stuff.
Yeah. And didn't Brent Williams play drums for that band?
No, he didn't play drums in that band. We were going to do Perverser, which was
that's right,
going to be a takeoff from that, written more like in drop D but reverser type style. That was Brent, and that was his name. And that was also Dwayne on bass. That was our attempt to try to get that stuff going on again. And we practiced a couple times, started recording, and then people's lives blew up, and it just didn't go anywhere from there. But that band Perverser is the one that introduced me. Well, Brent is the one that introduced me to the HM2 pedal, because I don't know a lot about metal. I was mostly a punk rocker. The metal I did listen to, 80s metal. Never really listened to death metal at all. Wasn't even on my radar. But then he started giving me links to things and talking about specifically like grindcore. I was like, holy crap. And really came to that way later than most people did. And then that's where the HM2 really just got my attention. And that, for those of you that don't know, HM2 is pedal by Boss. Mm-hmm. It's a heavy metal too, which is basically the buzzsaw sound you hear of like the Swedish death metal. That sort of defined that genre back in the 90s. And I'm sure there are people listening to it that know a lot more about it than I do. I don't pretend to be an expert, but the thing that grabbed me was the tone. I was listening to a band called Rotten Sound, and I was like, holy crap, that guitar tone is insane. And I talked to Brent about it, and he's the one that got me turned on to the HM2, and so we tried it, and that was Perverser was my first go at that pedal.
Yeah.
And I couldn't really get it to sound the way I wanted it to. It's a very difficult pedal to work with. But that was Perverser. That was Brent Williams, and that was kind of his brainchild. I would come up with riffs, and he did all the arrangements, and we would just do it on the spot, record it on the video camera, do that. But unfortunately, that didn't go any further than that. I wish we had actually gotten more material and played a show, because it would have been insane. That would have been so much fun.
Yeah.
But maybe someday in the future that will happen. Who knows? But yeah, so that was that. That was after Reverser and doing a couple other things, and then I kind of laid low for a little while. And then I was in QCR for a while, Queen City Rejects. Starting to do From the Gun at the time. It wasn't called that. We didn't have a name for it. It was the band that Dwayne kept trying to quit, but I wouldn't let him quit. He's like, man, I don't know how to do this. I'm like, yeah, you do. Shut up. Get out here. It's like, oh, it's so far away. I was like, shut up, man. You know you love it. You know you want to do it. And I was relentless. I wouldn't let him quit.
Yeah.
And so we finally got another drummer, but that was still kind of taking off. And he's like, hey, I'm playing with Johnny. And I kind of knew John a little bit. We had I'd done a show with Chapel Grove with Reverser. And I didn't really know him, but I knew of him. And so I went over to their practice space in Ranlow, and we went through some songs, and it was a good fit. I thought that we got together really well personally and musically. It was a lot of fun, and he's a super cool guy, and he has a very strong vision for what he wanted to do, which I appreciated, because I like that. I want someone to have somebody's got to have a direction and a vision. He's definitely a leader in that respect. Yeah. And he's like, this is what we're doing. This is where we came from. This is what I want from you. And it was great. It was refreshing. There was no jamming. There was no like, oh, let's see what happens with this, or noodling around. It was all very much, the songs were written, we're ready to go. We need somebody to play guitar on this, rhythm guitar. Dwayne's already got the leads covered. Yeah. Can you do it? And I was like, yeah, this is awesome. And so it worked out really well. That's how I got into QCR. I was in QCR for 2 years. Yeah. And then sort of like Sleestacks, that's when From the Gun started picking up. Like Sleestacks and 134 was QCR From the Gun. Yeah. From the Gun, my project, really. I was writing all the material at this point. Dwayne had kind of like, he just had to leave. He had to quit. He couldn't do it anymore. Yeah. And we found other people to fill in that slot. And I met Travis from doing a QCR show at the Milestone. Mm-hmm. He was playing with Jack Dillinger. I think that's the name of the band, Jack Dillinger. Something or other, Smoking Guns, I can't remember. And we like hit it off right away. Like I didn't know him at all. I was doing sound check for QCR. It's like, hey, do your sound check and for vocals, and I just was yelling, hey, 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 over and over again, and he was just cracking up, and I was like, well, I'm glad somebody thinks it's funny, because I'm like not a singer. I'm just an idiot up here. I don't know how to sing. I'm just whatever. Yeah. So we hit it off well, and then we got together, and I saw him posted he was looking for something to do, and I was like, hey, man, I've got a side project, and so he became the singer for From the Gun at the time, which was, I don't think we really even had a name at that point either. all these bands just kind of transition, mix and meld into each other in not a straight timeline. It's all kind of.
And that's what I meant kind of about the evolution of Trash Room. It wasn't really that it's the same band. It's what led up to you getting there, because it was kind of a transition from one band to the other pretty seamlessly there for a little bit.
Yeah, I was at that point, like my boys were older. Angela was gracious enough to carry that for a little while, so I could go out and how it is. And if you want to play in a band, you got to go out and see bands. You can't expect people to want to play with you. They don't know who you are. You got to go out and you got to meet bands. You got to make the effort. You got to go see bands, and you got to put yourself out there. And I hate to use the word networking. It sounds kind of cheesy, but it really is what it is. And but you're not doing it to advance your career. You're doing it to meet people and to find people to collaborate with, be creative with. So in that way, it's not really the same, but it is in a lot of other ways. So I started doing that, going to the Milestone and Snug, and just seeing bands and meeting more people and kind of recruiting people and keeping kind of tabs mentally on who was doing what. And I met Levi from No Anger Control, and we talked about doing a project at some point. And he actually was the original drummer for Trash Room briefly. We did one practice together, and then it just kind of didn't go anywhere, honestly. And Levi's a great guy, and I love him. For what I had in mind for the riffs, it was just a different style, and he's got another band full time. They're doing all kinds of stuff. I didn't want to try to take away from that. These guys are awesome, and he has he's a family too. He's got a job. He's also going to school. At the time, I was like, I'm not going to push him too hard into doing a side project when I'm the one that wants to make it a full time thing. It's not fair. So we were like, what are we going to do? And then I was like, I always thought of Travis as a vocalist, but I knew he was a drummer, and we did something briefly on the side from the gun with Fred and Jeremy. I knew he could play, and I'd seen him play before, and I was just like, click, man, like these riffs are Travis, and but at the same time we were thinking about who are we going to have do vocals on this project, because I don't want to sound like everybody else. I want to do something different. I want to mix genres as much as possible, blend people that don't necessarily fit together on, just if you look at them on paper, get something different about. So I had, Angela, my wife, she was our bass player. Obviously, I loved having that diversification because not just she's a woman, but because she's not in the same music scene that I had been in for a long time. She had a different perspective on what she wanted to do.
Yeah.
And, she was calling the shots, and she still does, on what riffs get used and what don't get used. I'm down there playing around on the guitar, and she'll come around the corner, what's that? And she'll point at it. And I'll be like, oh, I don't know. She's like, you need to record that right now. And so I will. And then that's how we get a riff. We start building from there, and I'll get a couple more and see. Different riffs are written for different songs at different times, and then we would all kind of get together and put them together, see what made sense and what fit in a simple way that was playable, but also interesting. So we'd have an atonal part, an off-rhythm sounding part, and then we'd have a very catchy part, all kind of mixed into one song. But it all had to be 4/4. I wanted to keep it simple. I didn't want to do anything real crazy with it. And then it got really heavy, and then, of course, I was using an HM2, which is traditionally a metal tone, and running it through a Marshall half stack, so I was trying to get as nasty of a tone as possible that was just obnoxious sounding. And write music that fit that tone. So the tone came first, and the riffs kind of came after that. And then we had Angela playing bass on it, and so she would come up with her bass parts, and we worked together on that. And we had a lot of songs already written before we knew what we were going to do with them. And then I had known Amber a little bit. We'd done a show together, I think, at the Old Tommy's.
Yeah, we played that show too.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, she was in Consumption Casualties, for those of you guys who don't know, and I was in From the Gun, and so we kind of, we knew each other briefly, just in passing. We say hi to each other, but I had probably seen her in person maybe a handful of times and didn't really know her. But I knew she was a poet. I knew she was a writer, and first of all, I was always impressed by her stage presence. I thought she's, it was refreshing to see. First of all, to see a woman fronting a band is great. I love it. Yeah. I wish there was more of it. I wish there were more people doing that. And I love seeing these younger girls coming in playing rock music. I get a real kick out of it. I love it. Yeah. And so to have it was my dream to have two women in the band, not just because they're women, but because they bring different perspectives. Like I said before, they have different sensibilities. They have different things they want to do, as opposed to a bunch of guys that are going to kind of do the same thing they've always done. You get different perspectives, bringing in different ideas, and you have different ways of communicating with these people. And anyway, so I had thought about her. I was like, well, let's look at some of her poetry. So me and Angela found her blog, found Amber's blog. We started like just kind of stalking her on Facebook a little bit. Honestly, and I was like, but I said to Angela, it's like, listen, I don't want this to be creepy or weird. I want you to like buy into this too. Like, I want you to read these words, and they're very powerful. Like, can you hear these words over these riffs we're writing with all these like heavy riffs? And she's like, yeah, oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And we went and found an old Consumption Casualties video of Amber performing. And so I just reached out to her. I just asked her straight up, hey, we're doing a band. Do you want to do it? And she's like, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I mean, it was that simple. But getting to that point was difficult. But connecting, once we finally put the invitation out there, was very simple. And, we connected immediately. She came over to the house. She had already had lyric ideas of like some of her poetry that she wanted to turn into songs. And we just like riffed on some stuff in the house before we even had a drummer, really. So I was like, you know what? We need to get Travis involved in this because he hits so damn hard. He is like, there's nobody that I've played with that can hit that hard.
Yeah.
And that's what these riffs need. They need heavy, loud drums with loud guitars over them. And because there's only one guitar player and one bass player, we're not doubling up on guitars, so they got to be loud and heavy as possible.
Mm-hmm.
We got to have a drummer that can do that. And then we have Amber, who is singing these insanely complicated poems that are, when you read them, are very deep, on a very deep level.
Yeah.
And they're not traditional song lyrics, in my opinion. They're not like pop songs. They're not something you can just, spit out and have it mean nothing to you. Like, if you listen to the lyrics and you read the lyrics, they're very heartfelt and meaningful.
Mm-hmm.
And we wanted that dimension in our music. We like the dichotomy of like really heavy music sounding with really punishing drums, with like these really deep, non-screamy type vocals, powerful vocals that complement the music somehow. It just all worked together. And so we knew we were onto something there, and it's been just a blast. So I just love it. It's been great.
We can drive it so far. Only thing that's clear is I want the fuck out of here. You taste like whiskey and bad decisions, and I've waited all day to lose my mind. Fuck their expectations, I like the way we are. I've got the whiskey if you got the time.
We wanted to have the songs really well rehearsed and perform them as many times as we could live. Felt the songs were really doing what we wanted them to do, and we got them to the point where we were pretty happy with them before we recorded them. We wanted to be as tight as possible because we're pretty efficient in the studio. We do it all live with like 2 guitar tracks, and that's it. So we recorded that on with Brandon Hamby of Dead Peasant Studios. You guys, I'm sure you guys all know him. He's also in The Seduction, which is probably his most famous project around here, but he's been in a lot of stuff. Yeah. Great musician, great guy. For me as a musician, well, pseudo-musician, I don't really consider myself a musician. It's very stressful to go into a studio because any imperfections are magnified by 100.
Yeah.
So when you're soloing tracks, it's painful. Like please don't solo my guitar track here because I know I screwed it up. You can hear it. Now I'm in a cold sweat because I feel like I'm a terrible person and I just want to quit. So that's not at all how you feel when you go to Brandon's place.
No.
He's very, as you know, he's very chill. You did one of your first interviews with him. He's very chill. He's just a very cool guy, very knowledgeable, understands what it's like to be on both sides of the recording desk, and makes you feel at home. We knocked all 8 songs out in like one day, and we were done. We didn't mess around. We just got them all done and moved on. And then in a couple of weeks, he had mixes for us, and it's a very cool process. It's very reasonably priced. And we were able to save a lot of money on recording that we were able to put toward mastering, which we did with Dave Harris of Studio B. Also a great guy, insanely talented guy. He's a madman, he's so good. He'll take what you think is a really good recording and he'll just pull more out of it you didn't know was there. And it's a thrilling experience. So that went on to our first CD, and that was it.
Yeah, and that CD is Whiskey and Bad Decisions.
Yeah, Whiskey and Bad Decisions.
Baby, let's meet in my car. We can drive it so far. Only thing that's clear is I want the fuck out of here.
That was it. That was our first record, and that was just the beginning. Then we went back and just did Boots on the Ground last summer.
Yeah.
We're already 3 songs into our 3rd album as far as the writing goes, and we played the first one out a couple times, Unbridled. This current situation's kind of put a kinking our plans of getting more songs out, but we're still working on them here at home, and Amber's still writing lyrics, and we're trading like riffs. I'll record stuff on my phone and text them to the guys, and they're listening to them, so they're in their heads and they're working stuff until we can all get back together again.
And you guys were working on playing some out of town shows here coming up.
Yeah, we have a show booked at the Sparrow in Charleston, which looks like it's probably going to be canceled. We're holding out. It's not officially canceled yet.
Yeah, pretty much like about everything right now that's not happening in April. It's not officially canceled yet, but we're all pretty much just waiting on to find out that it's going to be canceled.
Yeah, absolutely. So hopefully that will be rescheduled to as soon as we can get down there, because I love Charleston. I've been down there in years. We can't wait to get back down there and play shows. And we don't do a lot of out-of-town shows. We did a show at the Cave, which was really fun. Mm-hmm. But most of our shows, or almost all of them, have been here in Charlotte, just for reasons, as you guys understand. We played Winston a couple times. We played at Test Pattern. That was a lot of fun. And we played at Break Time Billiards. That was a weird show, but it was still fun too. We like playing these little odd places that are out of the sort of unusual places to play at. But that's a lot of fun for us too. So
yeah, but I think that's what I would like to play some more out of town shows, just because I feel like that's the next step. I love playing Charlotte, and I don't want to play out of town all the time. I like playing Charlotte, but I do want to try to build our audience a little bit, and that's really the only way to do it, is to kind of branch out a little bit and go hit Columbia and hit Chapel Hill and hit Asheville and hit Winston-Salem and Wilmington and Charleston and all those places,
Absolutely.
So hopefully when all this is said and, all this is over with, I was getting ready to start booking and trying to book some out-of-town shows when all this started happening, and I just held off on booking. I'm like, wait, I want to wait and see what's going to happen with all this.
Right.
So hopefully on the other side of all this, we'll all get to play some out-of-town shows.
I would love to. That's something we've always enjoyed doing. I personally like playing places I don't know that well. I like to play for people that don't know me, because it's a real test to me. Like, does this stuff really stand up, or is it just like, am I fooling myself? And if I get a reaction from people, then I feel like I'm doing my job, and I want to get people excited about music, and it's hard to find people, especially our age, that still go out to see local bands and are tolerant of loud volumes, because honestly, a lot of places with sound guys, nothing against sound guys, but they always want you to turn the damn thing down. Yeah. And it's like, I understand that. It makes perfect sense. It's physics. You got to do it. You don't want to blow people's heads off. But standing in front of the half stack, cranked up, you feel that in your guts when you're playing. There's nothing like that, and that comes through your playing. And so that's why I love playing these little places, and I can't wait to get back into that, because that's part of that feeling that you don't get anywhere else in your life. Yeah. And a lot of people our age never have that feeling and never will feel that feeling, because that's not their path in life. They don't know how to play an instrument, or they're too busy with their stocks or whatever the hell they're interested in. And that's just not me, man. It's all about rock, and that's all I've really ever wanted to do. Reality sets in at some point in your life, and you realize you're not going to make it, and you got to do something else. And that's just the way it is, especially if you want to have a family and a house. I mean, you got to make sacrifices, and that's part of all of what we've done. But you're right. I think once things get back to normal, which may be a year, maybe 2 years, who knows? I think we're all going to hit it really hard, and I think it's not a good thing. This is a terrible situation, but we're all going to come out of it. We're going to want it even more. Yeah. It's like we're going to want it. Playing shows are going to be more precious. Like the memories we have of recent shows that are still fresh. I treasure those. I think about them all the time, and people may think, oh shit, you've had like 6 glasses of whiskey and 3 beers or whatever. I mean, I don't drink that much, but I'm pretty lit up when I play Trash Room, because I can. Yeah. And it's all there, man. I remember it, and it all matters. And going back and thinking about that stuff it's great. It's a lot of fun. It gives us a way to cut loose that we can't do in other parts of our life.
Yeah, just like that last show that we got to play at Freeman's was.
Man,
I'm just so glad that we got that show in before all this happened.
That was insane. That was such a great show, and again, thank you so much for letting us be a part of it, because it was just so much fun, and we love Freeman's. I wish I lived closer. I honestly would go there more often if I could. I think it's a great place. I just love it. First time I played Freeman's was in QCR, and there's a picture of me like playing guitar behind Johnny when Johnny was still playing bass and singing. And Dwayne's over there too, and like people were just like stage diving off the bar, and jumping onto Johnny while he's playing. I was like, holy crap, Johnny's a pretty stout dude, so he could take it, you know, people were like bouncing off him and shit. And like, if I was like, I gotta back up because it's one of those kids that's me. I'm going down, man. I can't hold these people up. And so, you know, I love that about Gastonia. It's like got that kind of wildness that you don't really see around anywhere else. And I love the people from Gastonia. And I love playing shows with bands from Gastonia and Kings Mountain and all this, you know, all around the area.
Yeah.
It reminds me a lot of, you know, and not to sound like people in Charlotte are jaded, but I will say that there are a lot of people that don't come out to shows probably because they can just go out to the next one, you know, tomorrow night. Or their friends are playing tomorrow night, so I'm not going to go out tonight and see this band, I don't know, which I perfectly understand. I get it. But when you play in a place where there's not as much going on and live music is a little more scarce, and this is not just Gastonia, this has always been our experience playing in South Carolina, Georgia, back in the 90s, you know how it was. You got these kids coming out, they go apeshit because they can't believe there's a live band performing in front of them that isn't at a sports bar, you know? Like, this is like a club that they can do whatever they want. No one cares. I mean, it's freedom.
Even in Gastonia, you get like one rock show every month or every other month, even.
Right.
You know.
Yeah, exactly. And everybody comes. Everybody comes out. And even people that we know weren't there to see us. Many times we played Freeman's. We had multiple times people coming out. There was no way I would ever guess that they would ever do anything except leave in disgust. Have come out and said to us, "Hey, we really enjoyed that show. We're really glad you guys played." And it just makes us feel really good to know that we connected with someone that would never have connected with us at some point if we had not played there. And that's a big part of it for us. We take it very seriously, and we love everybody that comes out and sees us. And I mean, you know, for me, like, I grew up playing guitar in like biker bars in Greenville, South Carolina, and those are places you didn't mess around in, man. And like, people were they wanted to hurt you. And we 134 played a couple shows, and we played this one show where this guy just threw a full can of beer at me. You know, didn't even bother opening it up. And then he followed it up with an open can of beer. And then they're throwing like pitchers of beer at us. And so I'm soaked with beer, like shocking myself on my guitar because I had poorly grounded electronics. And it's like what the hell? But like, we still did the show. And so it's like I said before, like, you know, that's kind of how I grew up playing, really. And so anything less than that, I can take. You know, like I feel like I can handle pretty much anything else. If you don't have like a biker that wants to kill you, then you're a good spot. You know, you can handle it. So anyway, that's just my experience. But we love playing out. We want to get back out there as much as possible too. It's been a lot of fun.
Baptize me in all that's holy, watch you roll away from me. Seeking light is for the worthy, and I doubt myself daily. Neon lights, hold on tight, let me drop through the night. Lose control, make me whole, surrender, leave it all behind. Neon lights, hold on tight, let me drop through the night. Lose control, make me whole, surrender, leave it all behind.
I did want to talk a little bit more about Dead Regions.
Yeah, I just thought about that. Maybe we can mention Dead Regions a little bit more.
Yeah, so it started out as a side project, and that's something that I've had sitting around for a long time. And so Dead Regions is me and guitar, my friend Ben Dubard on bass, like I told you before. He was in 431 and Imp. And then Charles Ovette, he's our drummer. He's been in Jules and a lot of other projects. He's in Psychic Graveyard right now. And of course, Crystal Crosby on vocals. She was in Bloodsucker. She's done some other side projects, and is just a great singer, a great person overall. And it's fun because, like, for me, like, these are all different periods of my, like, places in my life that I know these people kind of. And I figured, why not try to get them all together in a room and see what happens? And, you know, Ben and I collaborated through, you know, email and stuff over time, trying to get riffs together. And when we all got in the room with Charles, it was like, man, I knew that was going to be it. And so originally it was going to be a recording project. I was like, let's just throw some songs together. Let's, just for fun, get these songs out there because I like these songs. I want to have people play on them. I've always been a huge fan of Crystal's voice, and she's a good friend of mine. And I wanted to have a project where I could play my crazy riffs with her voice on top of it. You know, like, how would that work? Like, is that even a possibility? And it's working beautifully. And so we've only played a few shows. You know, it's the understanding, obviously, is that Trash Room always comes first. Trash Room is my first band, and it's the thing that I always put my energy towards first. I don't promote Dead Regions at all. The other guys do that, Crystal primarily. I'll do shows as they come in, but I'm not out actively looking for shows for Dead Regions. We're going to record at some point, but it's a different style of music, slightly from Trash Room. It's less kind of straightforward in some ways, and other ways it's more off the wall with odd times and weird chords and just in atonal progressions and stuff. And then Crystal just singing her stuff on top. It's like it's so good. I love it. And I'm not trying to like say, oh, we're the greatest band ever, but for me, it's very fulfilling to hear these elements come together, and that's why I do it, out of my own personal satisfaction, really. And other people like it too. That's great. But so hopefully we'll do a couple more shows here and there as time permits, and we're all at a good place in our lives where we have time to do these kinds of things. And if that changes, it changes, and there's no hard feelings. But for now, we're still writing songs and putting stuff out there. And eventually, we'll have a record out at some point. I don't know when, but.
Welcome to your press repairs, contrive and implore, rusting through our middle clear barricades and corridors. What you want? What you hiding? Protect your health, son, but why deny? Mind your mind, mind your mind, mind your mind. Mind your mind. Terror the eye, terror the eye, terror the eye, but don't go blind.
Thanks again. You were also very helpful in getting us that show, and that was it's great because we're still doing shows together, and whatever projects we're in, you and I are continually like promoting each other, supporting each other, and like just your whole Gabba Gabba podcast and zine and radio show. It's so great, and I just want you to know that we all really appreciate it, and we love the fact that you're doing this for little to no recognition, as far as I understand. And you're doing it because you love it and you really care about it. That's the difference. You're not a DJ. You're not trying to just promote yourself. You're not looking for a spot on a radio station. You're doing all the homework and research yourself because you have all this stuff in your collection, or you're going out and getting it.
Yeah.
And you're making these connections, and you're finding out. I'm learning all kinds of stuff about what's been going on in the Charlotte music scene.
Yeah.
And so to me it's interesting because I know these people. These are people that are my contemporaries, that they go way back in Charlotte as well, that I didn't know back then. And so it's really fun to hear all these stories and make these connections and hear the music, unfiltered versions, cassettes, 7 inches, raw cuts from rough mixes. It's great. That's how it all starts, and it's how it's really, we gotta, Trash Room spends a lot of time getting good production, but it's not that important. It's really the songs, and you're bringing that back to life, and you're pointing out, like, hey man, we had crappy equipment back then, we had crappy recorders, and it all sounded terrible, and even back then we knew it didn't sound great, but we loved it anyway.
We documented it, and we've still got it today to share.
That's right.
And
you've got tape machines that it's like generation loss and hiss. In some cases you can barely hear the music at all, but you know it, and so it's great to bring that back. It's very valuable as just for the history of the scene, but also for people that may be younger that weren't around or don't really have a chance to experience that now. There's a lot of people that would love to be involved in that kind of the music scene that just not there. Yeah. And you're bringing it all back, and this is what we did when we were young, and listen to that. It's great. I just love it. So I can't speak highly enough of you for doing that, and also for taking the time to talk to me, because I can talk about myself forever. So I really appreciate you listening.
Well, thank you for saying all that, and thank you for doing the things that you do, because honestly, like you said, we've been working together for almost 28 years now.
Yeah,
something like that, and I enjoy like booking shows together with you and doing things like that, and I'm sure we'll collaborate on stuff more in the future as well. So
absolutely. And we always say Van Huskins is always our first choice when Trash Room has a show.
Yeah.
If we can get Van Huskins on the bill, we're going to get Van Huskins on the bill, and it doesn't always work out. But like, you guys are always our first choice, and just because we have that history and the camaraderie, and of course that's not to say that we don't love the other bands as well, but we have the history with you guys.
Yeah.
It goes back so far and so deep that we cherish that, and so we want to make sure we are sticking together as much as possible, because we all understand how it is. We can all appreciate it on the same level as everybody else. And you and I go back a long way just as individuals, and have traded I don't know how many recordings of different bands, and it's just it's important to keep that stuff alive and to remember that before we all go our separate ways or pass on and it's lost. We want to keep it alive as much as possible. there's more to come. Hopefully we'll get together again and do some collaboration. We talked about doing a split 7-inch with you guys, and we want to keep doing it.
Yeah.
And so that now this is official. We're going to do it, and you guys are hearing it on the air. Trash Room and Van Huskins at some point are going to do a split 7-inch.
Yeah.
And I don't care who's on what label, who's doing what. We're going to do it. So that's the way it's going to happen.
Oh yeah,
So
I definitely will. I definitely will do that.
Me and you and Brandon are going to make it happen too. We're all going to get on the phone at some point and pick out a date, and that's just going to be the way it goes. But
This has been a Gabba Gabba Hunt Media production.